After a massive tsunami devastated the Sekrak Bay coast, a conclave of wizards convened to discuss a solution. However, when a kobold informed them of the rising empire of the witch Kisio the Dread, the wizards soon realized even more was at stake. Many of the smaller countries along the coast fell quickly as Kisio's legion met almost no successful resistance, at least not until the Battle of Kazio River, when the armies of Yamokar and Marona managed to kill the necromancer, Jiradi the Terrified. With the first of Kisio's lieutenants defeated, the witch was forced to divert her own personal forces. Her legion eventually routed the humans, but for the first time in 4 years, the living had tasted hope. The war was far from over, but for the first time, the road to victory was made clearer. Welcome back to all returning viewers, and hello if you're new. If you didn't catch the last video, the summary should have been enough to get the gist. If you'd like to check it out in full, link in the card and in the description. Also consider leaving a like or a comment, and get ready, because this is going to be a big one. When the news of the Battle of Kazi River reached the Wizards' Conclave, they saw the potential of black powder as a solution against the undead. With their combined wealth, the Wizards could finance a mighty army, equip them with the finest weapons, and pit them against the undead, offering their own magical support as well. Rigorous and protracted debate followed over which country should be the focus of this effort. Eventually, the realm known as Kycilia eked out to win. While ravaged by the tsunami, the kingdom still had the largest population in the area, and so the conclave resorted to the oldest trick in the book. With false prophecy and the political influence of the Kycilian court wizards, they brought a young farm boy, a distant relative of a long-dead king, onto the throne of Kycilia, a figure they believed could be easily influenced. Unfortunately, for everyone really, the young King Nisa had other plans. Kobolds had ruled Kycilia on and off for over a millennia, and had recently begun favoring their own kind for positions of power. Many humans had always despised the diminutive reptilians who had invaded Altos many, many years ago, but with power now in their hands. Once the Kycilian army was raised under the instruction of the Conclave, they marched to meet with the kobold-led armies of Barontia and Haraman, a corps of heavy shock cavalry supported by a huge number of spearmen, crossbowmen, and some supporting handgunners and cannons. But when they arrived, the Kycilians attacked their would-be allies. Nisa intent on wiping out the kobold leadership and asserting human domination of the Sekrak Bay. And so as the Yamokar coalition made a fighting retreat in Barnacar, the Kycilians became bogged down fighting kobolds in the west. Wizards on the ground attempted to mediate a ceasefire, at least until the undead were defeated. For surely, even with their hatred of the kobolds, the Kycilians could agree there was a greater threat at hand. But even after nearly a year of trying, the negotiators had made no progress. Back on the island of Chena, there was much I told you so from the wizards that had opposed supporting Kycilia from the start, but at this point, they were running out of options. The undead had besieged the cities of Orskar and Lifse, and crossed into the islands of Yalmokar. The coalition's manpower was depleted. With supplies, they could perhaps hold out several more years, but they wouldn't be in a position to counterattack for decades. The more southern kingdoms, such as Badurkar and Tharmon, were fairly decentralized realms. They could field a large army, but it would take time. Too much time. Kentar, a kobold kingdom near Kisio's northeastern advance, was proposed by many, but the Dragon Queen Shekarunku was uncertain and not easily swayed. The dwarves of the Holy Republic of Pefte were also floated as a possibility, but they were even further away from the fighting, and also in the midst of electing a new Lord Priest. Ultimately, the Conclave decided to take a bold swing. The Kisikar democracy was born a few decades earlier in 4986, when the followers of the Tasso Faith in Barkokar and Kisikar rebelled against the niche kingdom of Marona. The Tasso religion traced its origins back to the fall of the Dragon Empire, formed from a decentralized clergy united in their belief of the doctrines of Nineg, their holy scripture. The niche faith ultimately originated in the Bronze Age human empire of Kycilian, based around a network of temples and a hierarchy of priests. The Sekrak Bay had seen conflict between these two groups for millennia, but with financial aid from Kiskos, the rebels in Kisikar and Barkokar were able to succeed, employing some inventive tactics on the way. While the Barkokar rebellion relied on the city's merchants, and it had formed into an early example of a mercantile republic, the Kisikar rebellion relied upon laborers, peasants, sailors, and other members of the lower class. When the rebellion ended, the rebel government remained. Any man of Kisikar, kobold, or human, could go to a town hall and cast their own votes. done through a show of hands. Plus, when the democracy was victorious in battle, the spoils of victory would be shared among the citizenry. The Kisikaris had been debating whether or not to join the war, but when the conclave sent a representative, the enchanter Koshi of Dagu, alongside an offer of 5,000 handguns, the people quickly voted to go on the attack. Kisikar city itself, on the southern side of an island at the very end of a bay, was mostly unaffected by the tsunami, and therefore was one of the most developed ports in the region, which meant it still housed the mighty fleet. Veteran rebels began to quickly train a large army, as the conclave provided them arms, uniforms, and other supplies. Within just 6 months, the first 10,000 Kisikaris were sailing north. Meanwhile, Kisikari diplomats, accompanied by wizards from the conclave, headed south, hoping to strike support for the coalition and hopefully get more manpower and supplies. But there was one more problem. Kyselia was still advancing in the west. King Nisa's armies attacked villages across Kiskos and besieged the capital city of Retskar. Left unchecked, the Kyselians would be able to attack the armies already crippled by Kisio's legions, and then attack the bay's defenseless Cobalt population. Luck turned when on the 3,400th day of the war, King Nisa was assassinated by a self-proclaimed mystic. Most suspect this was orchestrated by the conclave, but no conclusive evidence has been found. With the king of Kyselia dead, his generals began to turn on each other. Chaos, which the kobolds of the region began to use to start their own counterattacks and rebellions against the human supremacists. Meanwhile, in the east, the Kisikari and their allies began mobilizing in ever greater numbers, as the first major battle for the new participants loomed ever closer. 20,000 Kisikaris, over half of them armed with handguns, the rest with pikes, halberds, or other polearms, and supported by many cannons, had sailed down the bay, and now marched towards the city of Liftsey. The capital of the Shahad Principality, Liftsey, had held out under siege for a year and a half. Ships trailed into the damaged ports from Balkakar, keeping the defenders supplied as the undead soldiers kept launching near-daily attacks on the city's mighty walls. The river Liv provided opponent natural defense, making the western and southern walls practically unassailable, while the 4 wizards from the conclave kept the draconic necromancer, Azrang the Bloody Clawed, at a safe distance. The Kisikaris were commanded by General Nyovi Nadej, the Iron Boar, a veteran of the rebellion. He ordered his forces to set up their guns on a hill a bit under 5 miles south of the siege. This was nowhere near close enough to hit the undead army, even with their longest ranged weapons, but it was just barely within sight of the city walls. The necromancer Azrang knew the Kisikaris could attack at any time, and opted not to hesitate, moving a detachment of his undead army to the hill.
Hold the line! Remember your training, and let us send these bastards back to the grave!
A cloud of smoke choked out the sky as the first volley of Kisikari shots scythed through the undead. Humans were able to fire over the heads of kobolds, ensuring a near-continuous fire rate, even though it could take half a minute for any individual soldier to reload. Then the cannons were brought to bear, firing grape shot into the front lines of the skeletal and zombified warriors. Bones shattered, flesh was torn, and row after row of the undead were returned to death. With heavy losses, the undead managed to climb the hill, only to be met with Kisikari polearms, pushing them down as they continuously fired upon them. The defenders within Liftsey could see the growing cloud of smoke in the air, alongside large portions of the besieging army turning away. They took the opportunity to sally out of the gates and join the battle. From there, it was only a matter of time. Azrang managed to escape, but his army was annihilated, the corpses burned, and the bones smashed. The Kisikari and Shahad then moved to relieve the similarly besieged city of Ortskar, routing the necromancer, Tatu the Defiler, and destroying her army as well. The 2 lieutenants flew back to their master with haste. Kisio was enraged, but until the campaign in the north was over, she could not spare her own forces to move south directly. The living could celebrate your victory. For now. If you want to be the first to see the war's thrilling conclusion, make sure to subscribe, and be sure to hit that bell and turn on notifications. If you've made it this far, also consider sending the video to a friend. We've been having some trouble with the algorithm lately, and for a small channel like us, every view is a big help.